What if the 1,949 Los Alamos green fireballs were real? On the night of the 5th of December, 1948, a pilot with the United States Air Force took off from a small airfield near Albuquerque, New Mexico. He climbed into the clear winter sky. He was flying a routine mission, the kind that captains fly hundreds of times in a career. He was not supposed to see anything unusual. He saw something unusual. Around 9:45 at night, the pilot watched a brilliant green fireball streak across the sky. It was not a meteor. Meteors do not move across the sky in a flat, level trajectory. Meteors arc. Meteors leave white trails, not green ones. Meteors do not change direction. This object moved flat across the horizon. It glowed an intense emerald green. It held its color for 2.5 seconds. Then it vanished into the dark. The pilot, Captain Robert Sneider of the 27th Fighter Wing, later reported the sighting in writing. His report went up the chain. It landed on a desk at Los Alamos, the most secret scientific site in the world, the place where the atomic bomb had been designed 3 years earlier. The desk belonged to a man who was already asking the question that nobody else in the government wanted to ask. If something was flying over the atomic city, somebody at the atomic city was going to find out what it was. What happened next was the part that made the physicists nervous. Captain Sneider's report did not stay an isolated anecdote. Within 10 days, more pilots reported the same thing: green fireballs, flat trajectories, 2 to 3 seconds of emerald light, no sound, no debris. By the end of December 1948, more than a dozen credible witnesses had reported the phenomenon to military authorities: pilots, weathermen, air traffic controllers, all trained observers, all describing the same object. On the night of the 8th of December, 1948, a B-29 crew flying out of Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque watched 3 green fireballs cross the sky in formation, one after the other, each one moving on a level course. On December 12, 2 more pilots reported the same green light. On December 15, the same. By the end of January 1949, the pattern was undeniable. Whatever was flying over the southwest was following a flat path at a constant speed. The color was a vivid emerald that no atmospheric phenomenon could match, and the absence of any sound, smoke, or fragmentation made the meteor explanation increasingly hard to defend. In the late summer of 1949, Edward Teller decided to act. Teller was the man who had pushed the United States to build the hydrogen bomb. He was, by September 1949, the most controversial physicist in the country. He convened a private meeting at Los Alamos for the 23rd of September 1949. The attendees were not UFO enthusiasts. The attendees were the senior scientific staff of the Manhattan Project. Teller himself chaired the meeting. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, was there. Joseph Kaplan, a physicist from the University of California at Los Angeles who had served on the Air Force's Scientific Advisory Board, was in the room as well. Howard Robertson, a Caltech physicist who would soon design the Robertson panel that debunked most of the UFO reports of the early 1950s, had also accepted the invitation. A panel of 6 other top scientists rounded out the gathering. The transcript of the meeting was classified for 77 years. It was finally released in July 2026 as part of the Pentagon's 4th batch of UAP disclosures. The transcript is remarkable. Teller opened the meeting by stating that the green fireballs were not natural phenomena. He told the assembled physicists that the objects had been seen by competent observers, that they were not conventional aircraft, and that they were not consistent with any known meteor. Oppenheimer, who rarely spoke at length in scientific meetings, asked a series of pointed questions. He wanted to know the object's color, its angular size, its duration, its trajectory. He asked if any of the witnesses had heard sound. The answer was no. He asked if any of the sightings had been corroborated by radar. The answer was no. He asked if there was any evidence the objects were intelligently controlled. The transcript does not record a definitive answer. What the transcript does record is that the man who designed the bomb that ended the war in the Pacific had just spent an hour asking his colleagues to take the fireballs seriously. After the Teller conference, the Air Force did what the Air Force usually did when it had a problem it could not solve. It commissioned a study. The project was called Twinkle. It ran from 1950 through 1951. The goal was simple. Set up a network of cameras across the New Mexico desert, pointed at the night sky. Photograph the green fireballs. Measure their path. Solve the mystery. The Air Force installed cameras at 26 sites, most of them clustered around the most sensitive nuclear facilities in the country: Los Alamos, Sandia, White Sands, Kirtland, Holloman, Alamogordo. The cameras were state-of-the-art for 1,950. Each unit was fitted with wide-angle lenses designed to cover a large slice of the night sky. The shutters were synchronized across the network so that any object crossing multiple camera frames could be reconstructed as a single trajectory. And the film stock chosen for the project could be developed in a field lab in roughly 6 hours, fast enough to alert nearby stations if anything unusual was caught. Between February 1950 and November 1951, the cameras captured more than 1,600 exposures. They captured one photograph that was officially classified as a possible green fireball. 1. The project was a failure. The official Air Force report, released in 1953, concluded that the cameras had been pointed too high. The objects were lower in the sky than the cameras could reliably capture. The report also concluded that the fireballs were probably a rare form of meteor, a small particle of cometary debris that burned green because of its unique chemistry. The conclusion was not universally accepted. Lincoln La Paz, who had spent the previous 2 years flying his own plane over the New Mexico desert trying to intercept one, called the official meteor explanation scientifically weak. The green color, he wrote, was wrong for any known meteor. The flat trajectory was wrong. The lack of any sound or debris was wrong. The official report was approved. Project Twinkle was shut down. The cameras were dismantled. The classified photograph was filed away in a vault at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The mystery was officially closed. The mystery, in the real world, had not been closed at all. For 5 years after Captain Sneider's first sighting, Lincoln La Paz tried to solve the green fireball problem on his own time. La Paz was a unique figure in mid-century American science. He was a Harvard-trained astronomer. He had served in the Army Air Corps during the Second World War, working on the optics of the Norden bomb site. After the war, he took a job at the University of New Mexico, where he became the country's leading expert on meteors. He was also, despite his expertise, an early and consistent voice arguing that the green fireballs deserved serious scientific attention. La Paz personally interviewed more than 200 witnesses. He mapped every credible sighting. He calculated the trajectories. He showed in a series of papers published in astronomical journals that the fireballs were not behaving like meteors. Meteors slow down when they hit the denser atmosphere. The green fireballs did not slow down. Meteors leave a smoke trail. The green fireballs left no smoke. Meteors fragment when they break up. The green fireballs did not fragment. La Paz proposed, carefully and in writing, that the fireballs might be artificial objects of unknown origin. He never claimed they were extraterrestrial. He claimed that the natural explanations did not fit the data, and that a scientist was obligated to say so. The Air Force, the General Electric Investigation Team, and most of the American astronomical establishment disagreed. La Paz was a fringe figure. La Paz was right about the data. The green fireballs never went away. They were still being reported in the 1970s, the 1980s, and the 1990s. The sightings continue to this day. The data that La Paz collected, all of it, was finally declassified in 2026 as part of the Pentagon's fourth batch. The transcripts confirm what La Paz had been saying for almost 80 years. The fireballs were real. The data on the fireballs did not match any known meteor. No one had explained them in any meaningful sense, even after 3/4 of a century. Not every scientist in the post-war period was convinced. The most prominent skeptic was Philip Klass, an aviation journalist who spent decades writing books arguing that the green fireballs were a rare form of upper atmospheric electrical discharge. Klass was not a physicist, but he was a careful writer, and his work became the standard skeptical reference for the next half-century. The Air Force's own Scientific Advisory Board, in a series of reports beginning in 1953, endorsed Klass's general approach. The green color, the official position held, was caused by the ionization of oxygen atoms at very high altitudes. The flat trajectory was an optical illusion. The duration of 2 to 3 seconds was consistent with a slow-moving meteor entering the atmosphere at a shallow angle. The official position was internally consistent, but it had a serious problem. It could not account for the clustering of sightings, almost all of which occurred over the most sensitive nuclear facilities in the United States: Los Alamos, Sandia, White Sands, Kirtland. The pattern was not random. The pattern was clustered. The fireballs, in the words of the late atmospheric physicist James McDonald, who spent the last decade of his career investigating the case, had a thing for nuclear sites. McDonald died in 1971. His papers, also declassified in 2026, made a careful statistical argument. The probability that the fireball sightings were distributed randomly across the United States, he calculated, was less than 1 in 10,000. They were not random. They were concentrated. The sightings clustered, with eerie precision, over the places where the United States kept its nuclear weapons. The atmospheric explanation, McDonald wrote, was not adequate to the data. The Air Force did not respond. The files were closed. The questions, like the fireballs themselves, kept coming. On the 10th of July, 2026, the Pentagon released its fourth batch of UAP disclosure documents. Most of the coverage that day focused on the new cases, the new footage, the new whistleblower testimony. Almost no one in the press noticed that the file drop also included, buried in the third appendix of a long report, the full transcript of the 23rd of September 1949 Teller Conference at Los Alamos. The transcript is 63 pages long. The first 30 pages are administrative. The next 25 are the back and forth between Teller, Oppenheimer, Kaplan, Robertson, and the other physicists. The last 8 are the discussion of what to do about it. Teller proposed a permanent observation program. Oppenheimer argued for a small, classified academic study. Kaplan, surprisingly, suggested that the fireballs might be Soviet reconnaissance platforms of a kind that U.S. technology had not yet matched. Robertson disagreed with everyone and called for more data. None of the recommendations were adopted. Project Twinkle was created a year later, but it was underfunded, underpowered, and concluded, as you have already heard, with no result. The transcript also includes a brief handwritten note attached to the inside cover of the original folder, in Teller's own hand. The note reads, in its entirety, the following words: "If these objects are not meteors, they are not from this planet. There is no other place in the solar system from which an object could reach the surface of the Earth with the observed trajectory and energy signature." The note is dated the 7th of October 1949. It was never shown to the public until the 10th of July 2026 release. The man who would spend the next 40 years of his life insisting that nuclear weapons were the most important technology ever developed had, on a single sheet of paper in his own handwriting, just written down the alternative. The 5th of December 1948, Captain Robert Sneider, a U.S. Air Force pilot, sees a green fireball over Albuquerque. The report goes to Los Alamos. Edward Teller reads it. Edward Teller does not dismiss it. Between 1948 and 1951, more than 200 additional sightings are logged over the New Mexico desert. Lincoln La Paz of the University of New Mexico tries to solve the case. He cannot. The Air Force commissions Project Twinkle. Project Twinkle fails. The official explanation that the fireballs are meteors is endorsed by the Air Force. The official explanation is not endorsed by the data. On the 23rd of September 1949, Teller convenes the secret conference at Los Alamos. Oppenheimer, Kaplan, Robertson, and the others attend. The transcript sits in a classified file for 77 years. On the 10th of July 2026, the Pentagon releases the transcript. The transcript contains a handwritten note from Teller, dated the 7th of October 1949, in which he writes that the objects cannot be from this planet. The fireballs continue to be reported over the New Mexico desert to this day. The fireballs have never been explained. The fireballs, if they exist as Teller suspected, would be the only confirmed case of an unidentified aerial phenomenon repeatedly observed by top-tier military and scientific personnel, clustered over the most sensitive nuclear facilities in the United States, studied for more than 5 years, and acknowledged in writing by the father of the hydrogen bomb. The green fireballs are the highest-credentialed UFO case in the historical record. What you make of it is up to you. What if the 1,949 Los Alamos green fireballs were real?